Hello and excuse my accent. With this video I will show you my process for this Commodore 64 restoration. This system was sold to me by a friend in unknown working conditions, so the first thing I tried was to plug it in via the SCART cable. It didn't work though, so I quickly reassembled the broken RF cable that came in the package. Although I didn't do a very good job, it was good enough to understand if the Commodore was working. I wasn't planning on using the RF cable anyways. You can clearly see that the unit has been sitting in a basement for a long time and is very yellow and dirty. Opening this Commodore revision is very easy, as it does not even have screws. Just applying mild pressure was enough to pop it open. After opening and disconnecting the power LED, I took the unit immediately out for some dusting using compressed air. Back inside, the only thing left to do in order to disassemble the chassis was to remove a few screws. Some of the screw holders were broken, but nothing that some glue can't fix. At this point, I did a quick cleaning to both the top and bottom halves to remove greasy dirt using household cleaning spray, like Windex. I then placed these two halves outside and cleaned them with water, with more water pressure than shown here. I brought the chassis back inside, dried it, and then cleaned it again. I opted to add some water to the retrobrighting cream. I filled the basket, put the Commodore halves inside, and then moved them to a sunny place. I poured about half the container in the basket and then mixed it a little bit. Remember that hydrogen peroxide is non-toxic, but it is dangerous if in contact with your eyes, so if you're going to attempt this, always wear gloves. Putting the lid back on the box is very important in order to maximize the greenhouse effect and avoid the retrobrite mixture to evaporate. Since it's important to have homogeneous light distribution in this process, every 30 minutes or so I went outside in order to rotate the box. After 6 hours, the first half was ready. As the bottom half of the chassis was undergoing the same process, I started working on the keyboard. The keyboard was the most critical part for this project, as it is where the yellow and brown discoloration were more noticeable. At least, the function keys were a little bit less affected. I started removing the keycaps, and almost immediately I noticed that many springs were affected by rust. Some of the keys had some white marker eraser on it, so I also had to put a little extra effort in order to clean the key without scratching it. Unfortunately, rinsing these keys off with the water hose is not really an option, as it is not just dust, but some other grease and gunk are present on all the keys. I manually cleaned each key, once again, using a Windex-like cleaning product. Once clean, each key's yellowing was much more noticeable. I took the opportunity to also disassemble my old Commodore 64 mouse. Remember to separate the spring of the spacebar key, as it is slightly different from the others. I brought all the keycaps and mouse plastics outside and put them in the plastic box. I used about 2 liters of the hydrogen peroxide solution in order to cover the full surface. Since the keycaps are very light, they would resurface every now and then, which is why every 30 minutes or so it is important to go back and push them back in the solution, as well as to rotate the box. While the retrobrite cream was making its magic, I went back inside to have a look at the keyboard and the keyboard springs. After cleaning it with compressed air, I had to remove parts of the springs that were completely rusted and stuck to the keyboard. After that, I also cleaned it once again with a detergent. I put some vinegar in a small plastic cup and put the rusty springs into it. Vinegar is excellent to remove rust and the process is completely harmless. After 4 hours in the sun, the keycaps looked good to me, so I simply took them away and rinsed them with water and then dried them with a towel. To better show you the difference, I took 2 pictures before and after using my DSLR camera. This is obviously before and this is after the retrobrighting process. As I mentioned earlier, the inside screw supports were broken, so I had to match them with their original position by height. I then easily glued them back together to the chassis using super glue. Similarly, I had to glue back a small piece of plastic that helps locking the keyboard in place. As I also wanted to replace the rubber feet, I first had to plug this hole here. The original plastic cover is nowhere to be found, so I had to improvise something. It's not the original piece, but it will do. All I had to do then was simply to buy matching rubber feet. I couldn't find a replacement being sold separately for the RF shield, so for the moment I will simply not replace it. Since there was some oxidation on the mainboard, I had to take the time to clean them using an appropriate spray. I was now ready to put everything back together. Unfortunately, all the back clips were broken and nowhere to be found. I'll have to fix this in the future somehow. Putting everything back together was very satisfying and the most fun part of this project. In the future, I'll have to look on eBay for an RF shield sold separately, and also I'll have to come up with a way to fix those 3 back clips. In the meantime, I bought a DIN to RCA cable. As the Commodore 64 was one of the first computers to feature composite video, all I had to do was plug it into this RCA to SCART adapter. It was time to testing it out, and luckily everything still works very well. Here is a comparison before and after the retrobrighting process. Thank you for watching, and once again excuse my accent.